I don't drink it often, but I've really mastered instant coffee. Hello, vinyl community. Well, I'm finally getting around to doing a response video. There's been a few threads lately that I'm hoping to respond to. So I'll start with this one. It's actually the most recent of the three. It was originally started, the thread was originally started by Cloudy Milder. Strangely enough, I didn't see his video. But essentially what he was talking about, from what I understand, is our record buying rules that we follow. And James kind of took it in a slightly different direction. And he referred to it more as guidelines. And I think that fits my mentality a little bit more. Because honestly, when I set rules for myself with things like buying records, I'm always going to break them. Or almost always. So guidelines would be more fitting, I think. But I'm going to take it in a very slightly other direction and basically kind of go through my thought process that I go through when buying records. First, before I get into that, just in case you want to look up their channels, I will link to their channels. But it's if you can read my crazy writing, Cloudy Milder and James Griffiths. So be sure and check out their channels. And again, I'll link to them. But yeah, so as you see there, I took some notes. So basically, this is my thought process. So the first thing I consider when looking at records, whether it's in a record store, in a thrift store, online, whatever it may be, the most important thing is it a bargain? I rarely pay full price for a record. Typically, new records, I rarely pay more than like $15. And used records, I rarely pay over $7, actually. There's exceptions, but yeah, for me, it's kind of a big part of the thrill of record collecting for me is feeling like I'm getting a good deal. So if I don't feel like I'm getting a good deal, I have no interest. There are very few exceptions. I've paid as much as $30 for a record, which for me, that's a crazy amount. But that was a Grail, so I don't even remember offhand which one that was. I think it was The Laws, self-titled. Yeah, I had to have it. So, another one, Pink Floyd, The Wall. All right, so the next thing I consider, do I want to listen to it? I'm not buying records, although I have like so many records I haven't listened to. I still have to ask myself, do I want to listen to it? If the answer is no, then out it goes. So, another question that goes through my mind is it a band I am collecting? Like, you probably know that most recently I've really been collecting the Guess Who. I'm also known for collecting the Monkees, although theirs are hard to find. But I keep finding the same few over and over. But basically, is it a band I'm collecting? Willie Nelson is another one I go out of my way to collect. I have a bunch of his. All right, next. is it band I've heard about or was recommended? So this is a big one because being in the VC, you know, we get recommendations all the time. We discover music all the time, like, you know, things we're not really familiar with, but maybe, you know, we've heard of the band, or even just in our daily lives, you know, we've heard a band name mentioned, but we're not really familiar with their music. So basically, is it a band I've heard about or was recommended? That's that question. The next one is a big one for me. Is it a blind buy? I'm huge into blind buys. A huge part of music collecting in general, but specifically record collecting, is music discovery. Someone else was mentioning that recently. It may have been James, actually. I could be wrong. Or it may have been Matt. I don't know. But anyway, that's a huge thing for me. Music discovery. Some of the best records I've bought were blind buys. The first one that comes to mind is a band called DAG. D-A-G. I just bought it blind, and it was like the funkiest record. I just loved it. Yeah. And there's been so many examples of blind buys that I've been like, wow, this is great. I'm so glad I picked it up. So, is it a blind buy? Is it unusual or something I'm likely to never see again? And I have quite a few of these now, and it's something I'm actually kind of proud of. I should have brought examples out, but I just wanted to get this done. So, just a few examples off the top of my head. John Wayne reciting poetry over music. I have a record of little radio filler, like content filler, done by the Navy. I have some language learning records, Japanese. I think I have Hebrew. Yeah, just oddball things like that. I think I have I have some documentary records. I have a documentary record about frogs. You get the idea. So, is it unusual or something I'm likely to never see again? Okay, now we're getting more into the physical aspects of the record. And James kind of touched on this a little bit in his video, but I'm a little more forgiving than he is, I think. But am I afraid to touch the sleeve? I don't care if it's torn, if it's missing pieces, you know, if part of the if it's written on, if it's come unglued. I don't care about any of that. But if it's like moldy or has suspicious stains on it, or what else? Like if I feel like it was just really abused in some way and it looks gross and I just don't want to touch it, I'm gonna pass. Because if I don't want to touch it, why am I going to put it in my collection? The next part of the physical aspect, and, well, equally important, I guess, is the record playable? And this one is key for me. I'm pretty unforgiving of scratches. Even if the scratch doesn't look very deep, I'm gonna I'm going to be very cautious about it. If I feel at all that it might skip, I don't get it. Because to me, if a record skips even once, it's unplayable. Because you're not getting the intended experience of the album. So even one skip and it's pretty much gone. So, you know, I might possibly try and save a record that skips with wood glue or something like that. But in general, right there in the record store, thrift store, whatever, I look at it. If the scratch looks like it's gonna skip, I pass on it. Yeah, to me, there's no point. It's often not worth taking a chance on it, unless it's like $1 record. Then I'll probably take a chance on it. If it's like $2 or more, I start getting a little hesitant. Just a couple more items here. So at this point in my thought process, as I'm looking through the record store, at this point I have a pretty good stack of records, and so I'm like, well, I need to narrow this down because I'm not going to spend like $100 on records right now. So the next thing I consider is, does AllMusic give it at least 3 stars? So if I'm kind of on the edge about an album, I'll look it up on allmusic.com, even though I'm kind of losing faith in them a little bit. They've been off on several albums, but I still use it just as kind of a way to just, you know, eliminate some purchases. So I'll go on allmusic.com. If the album has less than 3 stars, I figure, you know, it's probably not worth it. And that gets to the next part. Because sometimes AllMusic either will have very little information on the album, or they won't have a rating for it. So in that case, I try sampling the record if I can find it on, you know, one of the services I use. And if after sampling, I ask myself, does this sound like something I would enjoy? So frequently the answer is yes, actually. But yeah, that's basically my thought process. So basically kind of starting out with value and interest, and then getting into the physical aspects of the record, and then finally, you know, maybe outside influences, or even my own initial reaction to the music. So those are all kind of my thought processes. Again, not to be considered rules in the least. They could be described as guidelines, but I prefer, I kind of wrote it out as my thought process that I go through. Because, again, the first thing I look at when shopping for records is the price. I'll be flipping through records, you know, something might catch my eye, but then my eye immediately goes to the price. If the price is, if I consider it too high, I'll just pass right by it without considering it further. Like if I'm going through a used record bin and I see a record for $15, I'm not even going to bother looking at it. For me, I mean, it'd have to be in mint condition to to pay that. So yeah, so that's kind of my thought process there. Yeah, so definitely check out James' video, and I'm gonna have to check out Cloudy Milder's video. So, but yeah, that's my thought process, and there you go. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.